Well, good morning and welcome to the first tuning in of 2021, very appropriately on the theme of uncertainty. Now, anybody who's done any form of management training in the last few years will, I think, be familiar with this acronym VUCA, VUCA, standing for Volatility, Uncertainty, Complexity and Ambiguity. Now, it's actually a military acronym that came into being at the fall of the Berlin Wall as the Cold War ended and all the geopolitical uncertainties that unfolded at that point. And it was adopted by management gurus sometime after that with the advent of the internet, social media, and the way those things changed our lives forever. The reason for mentioning it now is that in the run-up to the pandemic, we thought we were living in a world that was volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And I guess the events of the last year slightly make us reassess our evaluation on that. So we are living in uncertain times without a doubt. So we've got a lot of really interesting speakers to look at different aspects of that uncertainty and how we're going to come through today from the economic side, from the media, advertising and radio perspective, and of course the broader political perspective. But in radio, we tend to be glass half full kind of people. So we believe that in this disruption, out of this disruption, could come different ways of doing things and possibly better ways of doing things. So I'm delighted that we're going to be hearing, first of all, from Dr. Linda Yu, the renowned economist, broadcaster and writer, with her view of how the economy is going to pan out for the next all-important 6 months to a year as we come out of lockdown, hopefully sooner rather than later. We've also got Lucky General's Andy NAIRN talking about his new book published this summer called Go Luck Yourself. Now, this is a subject that's quite close to my heart, actually, because I think that we really don't talk enough about the role of luck in the world of business. As Andy says, luck tends to be a 4-letter word in the business world. So I'm looking forward to hearing from Andy. We also have, for a global perspective, we have former Foreign Secretary and now President and Chief Executive of the International Rescue Committee, David MILIBAND, who of course will be able to give a broader global view of how we will come out together of this pandemic and how that will affect us all. So we have got a packed lineup for you today. I can't mention everybody now, but it wouldn't be a Radiocentre conference if we weren't unveiling some Radiocentre research. And that will look at how spending intentions as we come out of lockdown, particularly among the newly working from home. We've also got Absolute's Dave Berry and Matt Dyson talking about broadcasting during pandemic and much, much more. So don't go away. We'll be moving at a really fast pace as ever. Now, as we went into this pandemic, we know that radio is incredibly strong, an amazing strong period of growth, and 9 out of 10 people in the population still tuning in every week, which is incredible when you consider all the other demands on our attention that there have been in the last decade. A big part of that was because, there were new stations and new technology allowed us to deliver many new stations and brand extensions, which proved very, very popular with listeners. And that also allowed us to attract the best talent. So it's been, it hasn't happened by accident, put it like that. We've continued to innovate in commercial radio. But undoubtedly, the economy took a massive hit last year as we all went into the first lockdown. And of course, advertising revenues were hit very badly at that stage. National revenues have started to recover now, as we know. So I was very pleased to see this recent IPA Bellwether survey, which says that, which pitches confidence at a 5-year high, which is since before the Brexit referendum. So that really gives us something to hope for as we go into the future. That's how our industry is feeling, definitely upbeat and positive. I'm incredibly pleased and proud at the way radio responded to the pandemic as the country went into lockdown in March last year. And people were desperate really to hear from the government, to hear from health officials, and just to hear what was going on in their local environments. So immediately building on that relationship of trust, we saw an increase in the news output from our local radio stations, up by 25%, more news broadcasts and lasting longer. And one of the reasons why people flocked to radio at this point was, of course, it's a very trusted medium. This is the European Commission's 10-year survey. They do one every decade. And every year of every decade, radio has topped the trust list for among all media across the whole continent. So we wanted to understand a little bit more about that, about how people were listening differently during the pandemic. And the main reasons they were tuning in more to radio was, it provides me with regular updates, it tells me what's happening nationally, and it tells me what's happening locally as well. And there was a very interesting phenomenon that I think we probably all noticed in ourselves as the pandemic wore on, that a slight fatigue with hearing too much news actually set in because the news was so terrible. So because commercial radio news tends to be short, sharp, people were less inclined to avoid it on commercial radio, and therefore people were tuning in more people were tuning in. So it was a kind of virtuous circle, if you like, that many people, as we know from our previous surveys, only have one main source of news. 12 million people really take commercial radio news as their main source of news. So this meant we saw an uplift in listening, certainly, as the pandemic wore on. So the other reasons, when asked, what are the main reasons you listen to commercial radio? Well, I'm sure we can imagine most of them. It keeps me company. Certainly people newly working from home are listening to the radio more during the day. It keeps me informed. It tells me about national and local news. But I suppose the figure that really jumps out at me from this chart is the people who say it makes me feel happy. 77% of people are saying radio makes me feel happy. Now, interesting, that's not anything that we have particularly measured in the past, but I wonder whether we might be doing that more in the future with our increased understanding of the importance of people's well-being and their mental health. That's a really important factor. And radio during this time has proved that vital piece of company, particularly if people are self-isolating, they're on the home alone or they're in lockdown, to know that although it's me and the voice in the corner of the room, but I'm also part of a much bigger experience. And that's something that has really come to the fore in radio's performance during this last year or so. So yeah, they're testing times, we know they are, and there's all sorts of things that we're all going to have to do to move forward in the months ahead. I think radio has certainly proved its worth. In the terms that it's very flexible, it has these attributes I've been discussing, and therefore we've seen lots of new advertisers coming to the medium, and we're going to hear more about that later. So people beginning to understand the creative possibilities of radio as well. So uncertainty, yes, I'm adding to it a bit, of course, by having announced my decision to leave Radiocentre after 7 years this summer. But it's a fantastic team and a fantastic industry, and I really look forward to seeing them going from strength to strength. Personally, I hope I have some of Andy NAIRN's good luck and have made a good decision at this time. But look, we have a vaccination, we have falling infection rates, schools are reopening on March the 8th. And I really think that we're heading in a great direction now. Let's hope that as an industry, also as a society, we can use this difficulty, use this disruption to come out even stronger on the other side. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the conference.